Hey everybody, it's that one guy, and I decided what I would do is anytime someone asks me to make or modify a WeakAuras for them, I'm just going to make a video of it just to kind of also show people that are trying to learn how to create their own WeakAuras how you can do that, or for anybody that's just trying to get an idea of it, this is what you do. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys, and I will also be killing two birds with one stone and teaching people about WeakAuras, but also doing something that someone asked me. So their request was for a maelstrom bar and a maelstrom bar that made a sound when a certain trigger was reached. So we're going to start out real simple, and we'll eventually have created a complex, or at least a customized bar that will do some things for you, and then you can just set it and forget it. So usually when you open up your WeakAuras, it's already set to showing you the new ones. Otherwise, when you click New Aura, these are your options to make new. And it's advanced, but for this purpose, we're going to do a progress bar for a lot of things where you're either tracking a buff window, the duration of something, or again a resource that will fill. A progress bar is going to typically be the best way to do that. You can use textures that pop up based on the amount of something that you have, but I feel like a progress bar is probably the most common way to show that. I'm just going to change the name to Maelstrom New because I already have a Maelstrom bar, and if I try to type in Maelstrom, it won't let me. So we're just going to say Maelstrom New. I already made one like that. Maelstrom 2 just for right now. Thanks. So if you wanted to rename it, you could just right click and rename it. There's a lot of different things you can do. Export is where when you're done with it, you would then copy and paste that onto the WAGO website, and you'd have the thing you created and you could share with others, or at least you'd be able to access it on other computers, or you'd have it. It's a good practice to do because, like, let's just say something happens and you lose all your WeakAuras that you worked so hard on. That's essentially an external save, is the WAGO website. So let's just start with the simple stuff. You've made it. It's just going to pop up right there on your screen. This is where you're going to change what it looks like, its color, and its orientation. Okay? If you do not want a horizontal bar, right? You're like, oh, I don't want something that's horizontal. I want something that's vertical. Step one. But you also need to change its orientation so that it will also actually flip the bar for you. All right? So you can do, because if you just do right to left, it's the gradient orientation, right, is all that you're really changing in terms of like the color of stuff. So see, the gradient can be top to bottom, but if you're wanting to do like the actual bar orientation, it's right here, changing it from vertical or not. So this is just changing where the color is, if the color is top and bottom or left and right? So I pointed that out to you because you'd see horizontal and vertical and think you can do that and change the bar. It's not. It's orientation and it's right, left, top, bottom stuff. Okay. Inverse would obviously just make the bar fill the opposite direction. For our purposes, for making a bar that's going to track our maelstrom, we don't need to set on inverse. It knows if the WeakAuras is smart enough to know to fill, because you're starting at 0 and going up, rather than something that starts at a certain time and goes down. You can change the color, right? This is where you could change the color to be whatever you want it to be. One thing that I really like is that here in this bar texture, you can open it and see that's all of the, the textures that they use too. So we can just use Maelstrom. And if you wanted it to be red, you can see it's going to be red. If you want it to be its basic color, the color code is all Fs. And the color code will look white, but really just means the natural color of the texture. So there's our Maelstrom bar. It looks just like the one you'd have in game, right? So if you're big on that, like you're like, oh, I want it to look like the one in game. There you go. Or I want it to look like the one in game, but I want it to be like kind of green. There you go, right? Bluer, purplier, reddish, and then like, an orange green kind of thing. So you can play around with that, and you can do the same thing with the gradients, right? You can, again, it's more of like a visual cue of how full or not full your bar is. It's just kind of what the gradient would do. Or again, if you're trying to be artistic with it and you wanted something top and bottom like that, there you go. Okay. This is also how you can like repurpose things. So like if you really like the look of the Maelstrom bar but not its color, for a different spec, like let's say Shadow Priest, you're like, oh, I really like the way this looks, but I want it to be purple. You can just make it purple. And I do that for a lot of my stuff, is that I really like the way something looks for one spec, and I use it for another spec and just kind of change its color or spin it in something so that it looks new, but it's really just a repurposed item. So we're making a Maelstrom bar. We've decided which way it's going to go. The bar alpha is literally like how visible that bar is. And then the background color is going to be whether or not there's like a placeholder box for it on the screen or not. You can turn it off, and then there's literally just going to be nothing on the screen, and the bar will fill into nothing. Or you can leave it to where it essentially has like a border or a fill space, so that there's something relative to how empty or full it is. Icon is just going to be an icon, and you can put it on the left or right. And it's going to go based off of whatever trigger you set. Since we haven't set a trigger, it's a question mark. You can do a manual icon. You just have to set this to manual and pick an icon. I do that for maybe like some buffs like Ascendance. I think I have an icon just because, again, video game type stuff. There's the image of icon. There's the icon image of Ascendance, and then it says the name of Ascendance, and then it says how much time I have in Ascendance. But for a lot of these, you don't need it. It's, again, just a preference. A spark is going to be that little extra white line at the end. And you can pick different sparks, right? In sparks. That's what these are. You can change the color and size of the spark if you wanted to. I tend to just not do it because the visual of the bar and the number of the resource itself usually does it for me. Progress settings. Don't mess with this unless you have something very specific that you know you want to do. Otherwise, just leave that on automatic. Position and size settings are exactly what they are. I usually try to do like 225 or 250. It really depends on what I've set for other bars and if I want them to match in length. For this purpose, we'll just do 225 because that looks like a nice little length. And then I usually do 10, right? But you can make it a nice fat bar or a really, really skinny bar, right? However you want to do that. Again, for this stuff, I tend to like 10. And then this is where X and Y offset, you can change where it is relative to the center of the screen. I tend to do like about -100, right? Be just below my character's feet so that I can see where my character's standing and still have that in a really good peripheral. This, where it's anchored to, I usually just leave it. Very rarely have I changed that to be something else, right? Just leave it right there. This, then, is where you would mess with these texts that you see on the bar as a very nice, helpful section for you to be able to continue to customize the visuals and what you see. I typically don't need the name unless I want the name for progress bars like this. Like, I know I'm tracking Maelstrom. I don't need it to also say Maelstrom. It's going to go off the name of the WeakAuras, or it can go off of the trigger, or you can just set a static name here and just type it in yourself. If I could press OK, right? And you can change the color of it, the font, the size of it, right? And if I do use a name, I usually try to match the text size to the height size of the bar that I'm doing. And if I do try to do a name, I'd put it on the left of the bar. But we don't need a name for this, right? We know we're going to be tracking Maelstrom. If you want a name and you deleted it, you can just click add text. And again, you can add any kind of text you like. And if you delete stuff, it's fine. You can just re-add stuff. For this, the progress, right? %P or progress is typically going to be what you want to be able to show you how much of a resource you have or how much time you have left on a buff. That's the most common thing I'm tracking with progress bars is progress. And this is, again, in format options. You can change the type of number format that it is. You can change, I think one of my favorite things to change is the precision, because if I am using a timer, I don't often care for the decimals. I maybe care about them when there's under 1 second left, right? So it goes 3, 2, 1, and then I see the decimals, or you can care about the decimals under 3 seconds, or you can just set this to 0 and you'll never see the decimals. I think the nice whole number provides a nice clean look, and I prefer that. But that's just me. That's just my preference. For this, it wouldn't have much of a difference because Maelstrom doesn't go in decimals. So it would always just show you the whole number, but this is just where you can mess with those kinds of things. And here in anchors, yours probably look like this when you open it, by the way. and you have to click on the gear settings to open this stuff up. But here in anchors is where you'd see, this is on the left. You can either put it on the right, all right, or in the center, and where you can change its size, right? And again, I usually try to match it to the height of the bar, just so that they're in line with each other. And one thing, again, you notice now it's tucked nice and perfectly behind that gear. This eyeball, if you click it to where it's open instead of like halfway open, then you can click on the bar again and the gear goes away, so you can actually see if you like that, and then go back in and make your edits if you didn't. So that's where, again, you could make the size of the text very large, you can make it very small, and again, I usually just match it up with the height of the bar that I did. But you could change its color, you could change the font, right, to anything else you'd like. If you have a certain idea of what you want it to look like, look, Harry Potter, right? If you got themes that you want to match up, not Harry Potter, I can't say that, Harry P. Clearly something entirely different. But yeah, if you have just something in mind for your own visuals, or you like a look, this is where you can change it and change its color, change its size. You can add, shadow and just really kind of mess around with stuff. But for simplicity purposes, just having a text at size 10 that isn't going to clash with the bar. If the bar was white, I'd want the text to be a different color, and I put it in the center. My only other tidbit is that if you do an icon, it shifts your text. Kind of annoying, and typically -5 is how you get it back in the middle. So if you're slightly OCD like me, right, you'll notice if you add an icon and you don't change the X offset or Y offset, it's shifted a little. It only irks me a little bit. But -5 would be putting that back in the middle, and you can play around with some, whatever feels right to you. Or you can leave it if you don't have a problem with it like me. And that's right there in anchors. So, I know I might talk pretty fast, so feel free to slow stuff down and go back and watch it again if you need to. But we have set up the look of our bar, where we want the bar, the information our bar is going to give us. But now you actually need to set a trigger. All right? This is, again, what is going to tell the bar what to do. Otherwise, you just have a bar that doesn't know what to track. You'll just have a bar. It's not going to inherently know. So in this trigger tab, right, for your resources, right, for your furies, your maelstrom, your rage, your things like that, it is in player and unit info, and it's power, right? And then you're just going to tell it the power type. So you check this box and you click the power type, and you can see all the different power types you can track. Okay, we're tracking maelstrom. Some of them a progress bar doesn't work, but you can track player power in all sorts of different things. It doesn't just have to be in a progress bar. But for us, we're going to do maelstrom. We don't need to check any of these other boxes, right? You can, if there's specific things that you're trying to keep track of, and you want different visuals for certain things, like I only want an image to pop up. Let's say you're making a texture, and you only want that texture to pop up when you have 60 or more maelstrom. This means that the image or the WeakAura you've just created will only be present when you have more than 60 maelstrom. Okay, so there's a way. That's what I do. If you're looking for visual cues on when you're supposed to do something, that's how you can start to make those kinds of things. It's like, I want this to flash up on my screen when I have more than 60 maelstrom. Done. That's how you set it. But for this purposes, we're just doing a bar that tells us how much maelstrom we have. See, there you go. And as I build up my maelstrom, it will tell me how much maelstrom I have. The little bar will fill with that preset color, and the number will tell me how much I have. But let's say you don't want to have to stare at that or be aware of that, and you want some simpler ways to keep track of it. And you're seeing all of my other WeakAuras going off at the same time. If you want to know what those are, there's probably another video about it, or you can download my WeakAura pack. I'll link it below. Subtle plug. Let's say you want a visual that lets you know when you're at 60. You can add a tick mark. Okay, a tick mark will be that white line on your bar. You can change the color of it, right? See that white bar goes away and shows. You can change the color of it. You can change the thickness of it, right? Right now we'll just leave it at 2, right? And the tick mode is just telling where the tick mark to go. Percent or value, if you know there's a certain percent that it needs to go out, you can do that. Or you can just do value, because it's going to be the value of the power that you're tracking, in this case maelstrom. And for our purposes, we want it at 60. because that is how much maelstrom we need to cast Earthshock. You don't need to press add. Add just means it will give you another tick to place. Okay, so if you want to place multiple, and we can show why and how we do that later, but for now we just want the one at 60, so we have a nice visual cue as we're playing along how much maelstrom we have without really having to look down there. The bummer of this would just be that it's kind of overlapping where that 60 is anyways, so there is a bit of a visual clutter, but I can tell there's my white line and my bar is past it. But this is also where like you could remove the number and just have a tick mark, right? You don't need to know the number you're at if you know the tick mark means you're at that number, and I do that for some bars as well, as it's like I'll just have the tick mark. I don't need a number, okay? So there you go. You have your maelstrom bar. You have a very basic resource tracker, and you can add a tick mark, a visual, to tell you when you've reached a certain goal or a certain value that you need to be able to do something else. This person's specific request was for a sound to trigger when they reached 60, just as an audio cue to let them know to, again, use Earthshock. So how we would do that is in the Conditions tab. And we want to add a condition. And the condition is if my power, my maelstrom, remember power in this case is maelstrom, is greater than and equal to whatever you want it to be. We want to know when it's greater than or equal to 60, because that's when we can cast Earthshock. Then play a sound, okay? And we want to do play. If you do loop, it's going to play the sound that you select for the entirety of the time that you have more than 60 maelstrom. So if you're forgetful and you needed to yell at you that you have more than 60 maelstrom and please keep spinning it, there you go. Otherwise, just do play. It'll just play the sound one time. This is where you can pick all the different sounds, right? They don't all have the same audio quality. Some of them can be, it's going to keep going. It's fun. Some of them can be subtle. That one's not bad. I like that one. They were talking about thunder, but it sounds a little quiet. And you also got to remember, like, as you're playing, there's going to be other sounds, the video game sounds happening in addition to that. So I try to keep things on theme. I try to keep things that match, but sometimes I just need something that I can hear. I think I'll hear that. And it's electrical and it's LE, so it kind of goes, even though, you know, we're talking about an Earthshock. But again, you can do whatever you'd like, whatever, right? Whatever is going to work for you, whatever is going to make you aware that you've got that. So, I have my maelstrom bar with a tick mark that shows me when it's at 60, but I will also now have an audio sound that lets me know when I'm at 60. All right? So let's see if we can hear it. There it was. You heard that. Let's see if we can hear it again. There it was, right? So whatever is going to work for you audio sound-wise, I pick that, right? Again, if it can be on theme and match the game, great. This is where I think Blizz can do better than we can, and they can have sounds that mean what they're supposed to mean and match the theme and, you know, visuals of the game without us having to do something like just play a sonar beep, because I'll hear that, right? You know, or I think there's even a gong or some chimes, right? Or, right? Whatever, right? You may need something. You may need something that's more aggressive. As for the sound channel, people will say that the different like sound channels you put it in matter, but for me, I just feel like they all sound the same volume, but they're like, oh, you can put it in a sound channel and mess with that sound channel specific volume, and that's how you adjust the volume of your WeakAuras, and I've never had any luck with that. Doesn't mean it's not true. I can't speak to that. So good luck to you. You're probably smarter than me. You can figure that out, and congrats. But yeah, you can do it as, we'll just leave it as an air horn, and you'll hear a nice loud air horn anytime you have 60 or more maelstrom. Okay? Now, really quick, because you're like, well, what if I'm not talented into Earthshock? Because then I need to know when it's 60. Not when it's 60. I need to know like when it's 75, right, for Elemental Blast, right? That's only This would only be true when it's 60, but that's not going to help me if I'm not talented in Earthshock. But wait, there's more. You're going to set another trigger. You're going to add trigger. And this trigger is going to be, again, in player and unit info, and it's going to be a talent known. You're going to want to change this to any trigger. Again, all can be helpful if there is a specific set of things that you want to be true before you want the visual to show. For this purpose, we want this visual to show even when we're not talented into Elemental Blast, but there's something specific that we want to be able to show when we are. So this means any trigger is true, it's going to show, and it's going to show, again, the power that we've been seeing. But if we want to show something different, right? Like, hey, if I'm talented into Ele Blast, right, I need to know when I have 90 Maelstrom. I think I misspoke and said 75. I need to know when I have 90 Maelstrom, not just 60, so this isn't going to help me. Do I have to make 2 different WeakAuras? Yeah, you could do that. You can make 2 different WeakAuras, or you can make 1 with different triggers and conditions. And this is where you get to advanced, I guess. So we have our power that we already set. We're going to do one for if we know Ele Blast. And here's how you start messing with those conditions, right? We're going to need a different tick mark, right? We're going to need a second tick mark. And you can set them both to be off and mess with those another time. And this one we want to set at 90. Okay? So tick 1 would represent the value that we need for Earthshock. Tick 2 would represent the value that we need for Ele Blast. And this condition that we set for the air horn, we're going to modify it a bit. All right? We're going to do all of, because we're going to do a combination of triggers and conditions that we're checking for. And it is the first of which is look to see if Ele Blast is active or not, right? Because if Ele Blast is not active, that means Earthshock is. So if we don't know Ele Blast, then we must know Earthshock. Now we can check if our power is greater than or equal to 60, right? Then play the sound, but we also want to now show its visibility, show tick 1. Okay? So this means, and again, it's a condition. Conditions can get fun, I guess, for me. We're going to do, it's all of, and we're checking first, is Ele Blast active or not? And then if it's not, right, we're checking if our power is greater than or equal to 60, because that must mean it's Earthshock. We're going to let the tick show that's related to Earthshock, and we're going to play that sound. And then we're going to add another condition, basically the opposite, again, all of. Now it is if we do know Ele Blast, right? Then we want our power, we want to know when our power is greater than or equal to 90. Okay? And then we want to play the same sound. And I just realized I'll need to modify something. Do the air horn in the master channel. The one thing you'd probably want to change, you'll have to add a second condition, is related to this tick, and make just a separate one that just is if it's active or not. So that's what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna take this one away, because that would mean it's only gonna show the tick when you get over 60, and we just want it to be visible all the time. And same thing here. So this means, again, if Ele Blast is not active, Earthshock is. When it's over 60, play the air horn. When Ele Blast is active, then we need to know when our maelstrom is at 90 or more, then play the horn. And then we're just do one more condition, that is, if this is active, right? If it's true, then tick 2 visibility is on, right? Because that's the one that's at 90. Or, right? And then I just duplicate it. There's probably a better way to do that. Or turn on the visibility of tick 1. So real quick recap. You're like, what if I don't want to make a second WeakAura and I just want to know when I have Ele Blast? And I want to be able to, the bar knows if I have Ele or Earthshock and which one I need. Add a trigger for talent known. And the conditions now are all of, right? And it's checking, do you know Ele Blast? And yes or no is how the rest of it goes. No, that must mean it's Earthshock. We know Earthshock is 60 power. Play a horn at me. Yes, I do know it. Then we know that's 90. Play the horn at me then instead. and then the tick visibility. Again, there's probably a better, smarter way to combine that all into one, but just for simplicity purposes, you make 2 ticks, you uncheck the box so they don't show, and you let the condition determine when to show them, if LE Blast is active or not. And so for our purposes, LE Blast is not active, it's at 60. You change it, and that tick mark will move. Fingers crossed if we did it right. Yay, we did it right. And then again, if you play, right, you should now instead hear the air horn when you get to 90 instead of 60. Let's see if that's still true. Ta-da! That's it. And then now you know that your maelstrom reset. That's fun, especially because you can get that this one or whatever it is. I forget where it can reset. Yeah, that is that one. So that's fun. You can have double air horns. So that's how you can make visual and audio cues to let you know about something like your maelstrom or any of your resources, and how you can modify it, like if it's a choice node thing like this has with Earthshock and LE Blast, and how you can modify it to have one weak aura that can tell you everything you need to know. All right, so I've set that once, never have to worry about it again. I can modify and change more things about it if I'd like, but otherwise that's it. Now I never have to worry about like, oh, did I make sure I have that set correctly for the right talents? The only other thing I'd say to do is make sure its load conditions are set to when you're in LE, because you don't want that to be active and true for every single spec that you play. And if you only want it to show when you're in combat, you'd check that box. Now the bar will not appear unless you're in combat. So that is how you make all these fun little WeakAuras things. I hope that's been helpful. I hope this helps you figure out how to create more complex WeakAuras. And if you have any other questions, drop them in the comments below, or again, you can message me on Discord. Otherwise, hope you like it and have fun.